Alright, so we have basically a one of the sample bootstrap templates. It's basically what we have here. Alright, so we have a navbar and we just have a little bit of content. So we need to change this into this, which is going to take a bit of HTML and CSS, and I might go a little fast at times, but I'll try to, I guess, explain everything that I'm doing. So I want to do the HTML first, and I always like to work from the top down. So we'll start with the navbar, which honestly is probably going to be the hardest thing, just because this is very different than this. Okay, so let's look at what we get to change. Of course, we need the logo. We need to change the color to white. We need to make it thicker or higher, and we need to move the links over to the right. Alright, and then we need to deal with the background, hover, and active link, and we also got to change the font and add, I guess we have two phrases here. We have features, browse, about, info. Okay, so we got to do all that. So let's do that first, get that out of the way. Alright, so first of all, this is an image, this logo. Alright, and I'm just going to get the images from the final version. Okay, and I'm going to bring them over. Actually, we don't even have an images folder yet, so let's create that. Okay, so we have our logo. Alright, we have the iMac, which is the main big picture in the showcase area. And then we have the three different devices, the desktop, laptop, and mobile. Alright, and the desktop is going to be in the middle, you can see in this section here. And then the other two images will just move in when we scroll down. Alright, and these different sections, this area, this showcase, this blue area, this, and then not the footer, but the rest of them, these are going to be section tags. Okay, we're going to use the HTML5 section tag for these three areas. Alright, so let me just bring all these images over. Okay, so the navbar, let's go ahead and go into the HTML. And one thing we need to do is add the font awesome CSS so we can use those icons. So let's do that real quick. Alright, now for the navbar, let's go ahead and add the logo. So by default we have a link with the class of navbar brand, and that's just surrounding some text. So we want to get rid of the text, and we want to put our image in there. And you should have an alt tag as well. And I'm just going to write the name of the template. Alright, let's make sure that that's getting red. Yep. Okay, so for the links, I want them to go on the right as opposed to the left. So what we want to do is look for this div right here, this div of collapse, navbar collapse. Alright, and what we want to do is just add a class to this called navbar right, and then save, and now it floats to the right. So let's go ahead and change the color now. We want it to be white. So we want to take out this class right here, navbar inverse. That's what makes it dark. You could do navbar default, which makes it a really light gray, but I want it to be white. So what I'm going to do is just take it out, take that class out, save, and then just go into our style sheet. And we're going to basically override the navbar class. Not override it, but add to it. Change some things. So we want to change the background to white. Save. Alright, so now we have a white background. And if you haven't used Bootstrap before, I'd suggest going to getbootstrap.com and clicking on CSS and components. Excuse me, you get all these sub items over here that will give you snippets of code. For instance, forms. If you want to build a form like this, it gives you the code here. All right, buttons. Okay, it comes with a bunch of pre-filled styles. Okay, default is going to give you this white, primary, success. All right, you can see the code here. Sizes, if you want to change the size of your button, you could just add button LG for large. Okay, so all these, all this pre-filled code is what really makes Bootstrap great. Okay, so now let's see, what else do we want to do? Let's change the height. Let's see, we want to change the minimum height. The default is, I believe, 50 pixels. We want to make it 85 pixels. And now that we made it 85, we want to go up and change the padding for the body to the same number, because that's basically going to push the content down under the navbar. Okay, we'll save that. I also want the text to be uppercase, so in the navbar class we're going to use text transform and say uppercase. Alright, so we want to change the font as well. I want to use a custom font. Okay, so what we need to do is include the fonts in the HTML file. So up in the head area, I'm going to go right above the CSS, and I'm going to paste in two link tags that are grabbing fonts from Google using fonts.googleapis.com. And I'm grabbing the Open Sans, and I'm grabbing the 400 and 600 font weight versions, and also the Railway font, grabbing a bunch of those as well. Alright, so we don't actually have to have these fonts in our file structure because we're just getting it from Google. Okay, so if we save that and then go to Style, we can now change the font to Railway. So font family, and let me just see. Okay, so it's going to be Railway, and then we'll default to sans serif. Alright, let's take a look at that. Alright, so you can see that the text is now a different font, and it's also all uppercase. Now for now I'm going to add a border to the bottom of the navbar so we can see where it ends. This part here will be gray soon, so we don't need a border, so we'll be able to tell where it begins and ends, but right now I'm just going to give it a temporary border. Alright, so I want to add some padding here for this menu to push down. So we'll say padding top 15 pixels. And I'm also going to align the text to the center. What am I doing? Text center. I want to do text align center. Alright, because we want it centered so that when we add our secondary text, it's centered under it instead of to the left. Alright, so you can see now that the logo has pushed down, and that's because the branding div has a default margin. Alright, if we go to F12 and go to Chrome Tools, and you can see that Navbar brand right here has padding of 15 pixels all around. So I want to change that. I'm going to change Navbar brand to have no padding. Padding 0. Save, reload, and there we go. So what I want to do now is I want to add our links. Alright, so we're going to have a few links, and we're going to have a drop down. Alright, just so you can see, just so we can look at the CSS for that. And most templates these days, you'll need to have some kind of drop down. Alright, so what I'm going to do is paste in a bunch of list items. Okay, so in the navbar, this is the navbar div. I'm going to get from right here. Okay, so these three list items I'm just going to replace with a bunch of them. All right, and I'll go through them. Okay, so first we have our home, which we're setting a class to active. Okay, so that makes it so we can design that particular list item. And the text is going to be home for the main text, and then the smaller text I'm putting in a span tag, okay, right after the link. Not actually inside the link, but after it. Okay, the next one's going to be our drop down. So it's going to be a list item with the class of drop down. All right, and Bootstrap takes care of all of this. We don't have to do specific CSS or JavaScript to have the drop down. It just will allow us to have it. And then we have the link, which is going to have a class of drop down toggle, and also have an attribute called data toggle equal to drop down. All right, and it's going to be called features will be the main text, and then browse will be the smaller span text. And we also have a span here with the class of caret, and that just gives it that little arrow to show us that it's a drop down. And then we have our unordered list, which is the drop down menu. Okay, so we have typography, components, block styles. These are just pages that you would have for a template if you were selling it or whatever. We're not actually going to create these pages. Then we have a single about link. We have a portfolio link. Okay, you can see we have the subtext, info, and our work. And then we have another drop down, which is going to be the blog layout. All right, we're not actually going to create the blog layout, but it's just a placeholder link. And then we have a contact link. Okay, so that's our navigation. So let's save that, reload, and you can see that this doesn't look very good. The first thing that sticks out is the sub items are way too big and also have too much space here. So let's go ahead and style those. Alright, so to grab those, we're going to do navbar and then span. Okay, it's going to grab all the span tags. And I'm going to set a font size of 10 pixels. Color, I'm going to make a lighter gray. And I also want to align to the center. Alright, reload. Okay, so let's see. Now I'm going to set the links here to have no bottom. Alright, so I'm sorry, no margin, no padding bottom. So I'm going to say navbar. And I only want the direct list items, so we're going to use the greater than. So what this selects is only the list items directly under the navbar. Alright, so if you have a list item inside of this list item, it's not going to affect that. And then we want only the links directly under the list item. Okay, and I'm going to set padding bottom to 0. Alright, next, let's see. I also want to set just the list items. The list items directly under the navbar div. I'm going to, what am I going to do here? Padding bottom, 5 pixels. Alright. Okay. Alright, so we still have a big space here. Navbar. Actually, I think this right here should actually be navbar nav. Let me take a look at it. Yeah, we want to grab this right here, this UL, which has a navbar nav. So we need to change that in this to navbar nav. Okay, we'll save that. Alright, so that looks a lot better. Now you'll notice that when we hover, the background is only covering the link, it's not touching the span. So what I want to do is make this background to the actual list item, not the link, so that it takes in the span with it. the smaller text. Alright, so what we want to do, actually, let me use Chrome tools here and just I want to get the CSS for the hover effect, which is this here. So this class here is adding the background color when you hover. So I'm going to grab all of this. Whoops. Just going to select it and do a Control C to copy, and then go ahead and paste that in. And I'm going to set the background to none. So that should get rid of that gray background when we hover. Okay, so now we want to apply the gray background to the list item itself. Alright, so we'll say Navbar. What do I want to do? Li hover. And I'm going to add a background of light gray. And I also want to change the cursor to a pointer. Okay, so we'll save that. Okay, so now we have that effect. Now the drop down, I just want to add a little bit of padding in between these links. And I also want to give it, when I hover, I want to give it a blue border on the left. So how we can target the drop down list items is just by saying Navbar li space li, and that's going to get the submenu links or list items. Okay, and I'm going to set padding. We'll do 5 top and bottom. Right. And then I'm going to put a border on the left. Okay, we'll set that to 4 pixels solid, and when it's not hovered, I want it to be light gray. Alright, and now we want to do the hovered state. So we'll say list item hover, and we can get rid of this padding. And then I'm going to change this to the blue color, which is 406 C96. Alright, so that should style. Yep, alright, so that looks good. So I think the last thing I want to do here is the active list item. I want to change the background to the blue color. Alright, so that's easy. All we need to do is say Navbar li.active. Okay, so the class with active, and I'm going to change the background to this blue color. Whoops. And let's see, I want to change the text color to white. And that's good. That should do it. Okay, so the text color didn't change for the link. So we need to grab this, and we want to just add an A to it to get the link, and then set that to color white. There we go. And I do want to change these this text. I don't want it to be blue. I want it to be like a dark gray. So I believe we should do that here. So we'll do 666. Alright, so that's it. That's our navigation. You can see we took it from, well, I don't have it. I don't have the older version, but we took it from that thin black plain navigation to something that looks pretty good. So in the next video we'll get to the rest of the elements, we'll do the showcase, and then the other sections, and then finally we'll do the animation. So stay tuned.